Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Time for Agape. It's good to be with you. It's a Friday, TGIF. I think we're all ready for a Friday. I know I'm ready for a Friday. So hopefully this is an enjoyable end to however your week was. We've got some important things to talk about today. And so I'm going to get right to it and introduce my co-hosts. We have Luca, Joe, and Darren.
Oh,
There they are.
Friday.
Happy Friday.
I'm looking forward to the Aurora Borealis.
Yeah,
I
just was
it's supposed to be super big, and it's like the first one since I've lived on the Canadian border where there's no clouds.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
So I'm looking forward to it tonight.
Yeah.
Well, we want to report on something on the front end, and this is very, very, three varies important. At least three, if not four. It might be a four very important thing. And that is that I'm sure a lot of Minnesotans are starting to hear that a few days ago, they added the religious exemption back into the language of the Human Rights Act. And you may be thinking this is a big win. And maybe it is on some level, but we want to let you know, don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. It really is a political maneuver because the goal is to get the Equal Rights Amendment passed.
Mm-hmm.
So Darren, Luca, I'll let you guys weigh into this because we're all following this. But why shouldn't Minnesotans and particularly Christians fall for this political maneuver that just took place?
Well, with the 4109 bill that they passed unanimously, one has to ask, did the Democrats have a heart change?
Right.
Last year, they put through the human rights bill that added sexual orientation, or added to sexual orientation, gender identity as a protected class. And they intentionally did not include a religious exemption, which would require all institutions, religious institutions, to say hire transgender identified people, to allow bathrooms to be used by your own gender identity. Mm-hmm. And of course that passed last year. And then this year, last month, when Harry Niska put it forward to fix that, the Democrats straight up, Lee Finke said, no, that wasn't a mistake. We exist, and this is part of the transgender community having influence in the legislation. And so you don't get a religious exemption. So that was the heart of what happened last year. And so now this week, all of a sudden, all the Democrats changed their mind and put it through and put the religious exemption back in there. And on the heels of that came the House panel with the Equal Rights Amendment ballot. And so really what this is a political maneuver so that when it comes to promoting this upcoming, both the elections and this Equal Rights Act, the Democrats can have plausible deniability. Oh, no, we're not against religious exemptions. We're not against the church. But what would happen is the Equal Rights Amendment, this goes before the people, and it becomes an amendment to the Minnesota Constitution. Yeah. So this would trump the Human Rights Act. And there would be no religious exemption. So this would get rid of that. There would be no religious exemption, period. And it would make sexual orientation and gender identity the religious belief for the state. And so all churches, it'd be what people need to understand is that we have a religious belief system that people are born gay, born transgender, and that is who they are. And so therefore they have rights that need to be enshrined in our law and punish those who do not agree with those rights or that belief system.
One would say it trumps our Constitution. That's what I would say.
It is going just like states were passing constitutional amendments to define marriage as between a man and a woman. Remember that happened? And then the Supreme Court said, nope, marriage is for everybody, it doesn't matter. And so those constitutional amendments became null and void. Just like the abortion ban in Arizona existed before Roe v. Wade, Roe v. Wade undid that. Well, when Roe v. Wade went away, all of a sudden Arizona says in their law says that there's no abortion. So now they're changing that law. Well, that's the same mechanisms that we're talking about here, is that the Democrats under kind of an allegiance to the queer caucus, to the LGBT community, is going to change our Constitution to say that you are a protected class as a gay or a transgender. And so that means that all laws can't speak to that anymore. It's
But
done.
the Constitution already says we are a born free people. So why? So here's, I think, what people are going to be confused about. If the Constitution says is the same, equal for everybody, it's going to be a problem, and they're going to think we're saying, well, why don't you think that the gay community deserves the same protection under the law? But they do already. They don't need a special class for themselves to be protected under the Constitution. The same rights apply to every person in America. Yeah?
Yeah. And Luca, that brings up a really good point. And I'm going to go back to gay marriage. Before gay marriage happened, or, before the Supreme Court passed that judgment, I was gay identified. I was a gay male, and I married a woman, Rhoda, my wife. So she married me as a gay identified man, which means that I had the same rights as a straight man to marry a woman, because marriage was defined as between a man and a woman. So my rights weren't being abridged. What changed was the belief system about what marriage is and about what love is. And so the Supreme Court, they were having a hard time deciding, is it what makes it two people or more? What makes marriage? Why is it two people? Why is it love? They had all these debates. Well, now they believe that they don't have the right to say, get married, to have families, to be employed in all religious institutions, and any other perceived discrimination that they would have. Now, they already had, they weren't, organizations like housing and employment, already you couldn't fire somebody for being gay, for their sexual orientation. That was under Minnesota House. The Minnesota Human Rights Act. But adding transgender now creates a new category. And so these categories of redefining the word sex previously to mean sexual orientation, and now sex meaning transgender identity, but now it's all distinct. Where they used to use the word sex to mean those things, now they're making it distinct. And
right. Okay. Yeah.
They see this as a compassionate move to prohibit discrimination, which would end quote unquote religious discrimination, but it's also going to do away with gender altogether. Just like quote unquote gay marriage, people say is allowing gay marriage. It's really undefining marriage is what it is. It's whatever you say marriage is. Well, this is the move that undefines what it means to be male or female. That there really is no discrimination. Bathrooms, gender discrimination. And something that I shared yesterday is that, or Luca, you shared it actually, is that they believe that it's discriminatory to not give a child puberty blockers because they are transgender from birth, and therefore going through the puberty that their body would normally go through is hatred or harmful. Yeah. And so that's where we're at. The people don't know this. They're being sold equal rights. Don't you love your neighbor? But the church isn't teaching them the deeper doctrines and the impact of what it will mean on the other side of this.
Yeah.
Right. So we're in a lot of trouble. And Nate, I can't imagine what it's been like for you because you've been screaming this for how long about
I was just
marriage?
just thinking that. I mean, I've been saying that this is the undefining of marriage for years, and that these things are coming. You know, it's like I've been blowing the trumpet and sounding the alarm. And what fascinates me is that now that they're actually here, it's really kind of the frog in the water that's been heating up sort of thing, because people aren't reacting how you would think they should react, or how they would have reacted 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. When you think about the transitioning of children, or kids showing up to their high school saying we're cats, and we're demanding a litter box. I mean, and I'm not even saying that to be funny. It really happened. And these are the kinds of things that are just so outlandish, but people are just kind of shrugging them off. And it concerns me, because when I hear about things like the undefining of sex and gender, that's really the undefining of humanity. And it's a terrifying thing to really think about. So, and then that's why we do this podcast. We want to be asking these questions and getting people to think about these issues. So, for those of you watching, we're going to be monitoring this, and keep tuning in, because we're going to be giving you updates on what passes, what doesn't pass, and then how to vote, given the language that they might use. Well, there are some other things that we wanted to get to today, that are happening in response to all of the legislation that's being proposed. And Luca, you were at an event yesterday, and I'd love for you to share a little bit about it. And then Darren was featured at the event, so we're gonna hear from him.
It was such an honor to be there. I have to tell you, Darren. I mean, you just really were in your element. There was a couple of times when I just got teary-eyed because it was so wonderful to see you in the place where I know you belong, and standing up for the children, and standing up for what is good and true and right, like Jesus does, and like he tells us to do.
Mhm.
And I was just really honored to be a part of that, and to watch you just shine so brilliantly. You started this, yeah. You started this wonderful move amongst the states, and starting right here in Minnesota, because you saw the need of what needs to happen with the states uniting, and calling the states to come together and to stand against these sanctuary states that say they protect the children, but they call these sanctuary states these because they say other states can send their kids here, and we have to pay the taxes to have their body parts ripped off and mutilated.
Mhm.
You know, that's I just, when I even say those words, I can't believe they're coming out of my mouth. So
Right.
why don't you tell? Isn't it absurd?
It's
Oh,
it's crazy, and I just want to say the event was called Cornerstone Standard, and it was
yeah.
held at the Minnesota State Capitol yesterday. And I want to echo what Lucas said. Darren, I'm really proud of you, and um, it's such a honorable and masculine thing to defend and protect the weak and the vulnerable. And I'm really proud that you are doing that, and you're trying to light a fire around the nation, and get others to stand and defend kids. So tell us a little bit about Cornerstone Standard. What is it?
All right.
Yeah.
We're going to visit the website here. It's cornerstonestandard.com. And all we have out there is a declaration of purpose. And it's to bring people together around the idea to call our leaders to do something about this. We saw in Minnesota with the sanctuary state thing with HF 146. And I stayed up very late watching those videos and hearing them speak about taking custody, of the kids. Yeah. And, HF 146, it says a bill relating to children, preventing the use of subpoenas to gather information for out-of-state laws, interfering with the use of gender-affirming healthcare, amending child custody and child welfare provisions related to out-of-state laws, interfering in the use of gender-affirming healthcare, amending provisions related to warrants, arrests, and extraditions related to out-of-state laws on gender-affirming healthcare. Now, that was a huge mouthful of euphemisms. But what it boiled down to, and what became very clear, was that the Democrats were voting in bloc unanimously all together at the behest of Lee Finke, who is kind of the leader of the queer caucus in the Democrat Party. And that law created as a response to North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, creating bills that said, look, we're not going to allow children to be mutilated in our states. It's against the law in our states to mutilate children. And so Minnesota responds by saying, look, we love the children more than those states do. And I'm quoting, what's her name? I think Collins. And that, yes, we will address custody. When the issue of who gets custody of the children, we called it a kidnapping bill, because if a mother and a father were disagreeing on transgendering their child in South Dakota, the mother could kidnap the child, come to Minnesota, and plead to the Human Rights Commission and say, our child is transgender. My husband is combative towards our child. We want her to be on puberty blockers. Then Minnesota would protect that parent from being extradited back to South Dakota, because leaving South Dakota to transgender your child is a crime. You're breaking the South Dakota law by transgendering your child. And so if South Dakota put a warrant out to say, send that mother and daughter back, the Democrats made it very clear that they will not uphold the U.S. Constitution, which would require them to do that. So in that bill, when it says that they won't extradite when it comes to gender affirming healthcare issues, they're saying, no, we're not going to uphold the U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 1, that says full faith and credit shall be given to each state in the public acts, records, and judicial proceedings of every other state, and the Congress may, by general law, prescribe the manner in which such acts, records, and proceedings shall be provided and their effect thereof. And so that's
one would clearly say, again, they're breaking the law. They are breaking the law.
Yeah. The Democrats, this came up that they would be breaking the U.S. Constitution. And they said, look, when slaves escaped to Minnesota, we weren't going to send them back based on the laws of other states. We're not going to send these kids back to the states that they came from. So they know full well that what they're talking about, that this is a sanctuary state. And then there was even another bill, which I won't even go into, but they're saying, hey, if you're a transgender adult, come here and we'll help you migrate to Minnesota and protect you.
Okay, so that's the problem.
That's the problem.
What is Cornerstone Standard?
So the Cornerstone Standard is saying we've got a problem and we need our states to create a coalition so that they can do something and provide teeth to this problem, such as if we extradite, or they realize what happens with that mother bringing the child to Minnesota, that they put a warrant out for that arrest, and the coalition of the other states know that that mother is on that list, that mother contributed to the harm of her child. Then if let's say she's traveling through Iowa because she's going to Nebraska for some reason, if Iowa pulled her over, they'd arrest her and extradite her to South Dakota. So it's creating a coalition of saying, look, we're going to work together to protect our children. And then another, and what this is the people saying, we want, as a citizen, you can sign this and say, we want our governments to join this coalition for the protection of our children and other children. It's not just about yourself, but it's about loving your neighbor. And so, and so as these states come together, we're saying work on coming up with laws and policies that are constitutional and legal that would fight what's going on in the sanctuary states. Because Minnesota is one of several states that you can bring your children to and they won't extradite you. So we've got a national problem going on here. And I'm saying the people want all children, not just their own, to be safe. And so when you read the Declaration of Purpose, it says, look, our entire Constitution in our in the Declaration says that this is by consent of the people to be governed. We, the people, we're governed by consent. But the contract is broken effectively when you start harming our children. That, it's not the Constitution's fault. We're not throwing away the Constitution, but we're saying you don't have the consent to harm children from other states, and that there has to be a means to respond to this. And so that's what we're asking, is for the states to come together as a coalition and figure out what they can do within the law. And one of the other things that we would like to see happen is, the doctors that they know are doing this to children in their state. So let's say we know that this mother brings their child to Minnesota. We know that they go to Children's. We know that Children's is butchering children. And that.
What do you mean by Children's? They're going to Children's.
Children's Hospital.
Children's Hospital in Minnesota is one of the, and the U of M, but Children's, Luca, that lady testified when we were there from Children's about the conversion therapy bans. That lady is running the entire program for Children's. And so they've got their surgeons and physicians and, the WPATH standards for surgery and what's the best practice for using these sterilization drugs to stop puberty. It's a crime against humanity, and it's, in other contexts, it's called eugenics. But in this one, it's called protecting the children by the Democrats. And so we have,
and they can make us sound like monsters because we don't want to protect the children, when yes, we do. You're not protecting the children. So this coalition and this Declaration of Purpose would empower people to come together and say, we're not doing this. Yeah.
It's the people calling the governments that. So when we were there, we had the legislators come down, and they were signing it too. And so we had citizens signing it on one side and legislators signing it on the other. And so this started really when I saw what was going on last year with HF 146. And because I listened to the debate and I understood what was going on, I said, well, we need to reach out to Kristi Noem and Barnum and can't remember the other governor, and write them a letter and say, look, we need to do something about this. Like, these are your kids that Minnesota is threatening, saying, bring your kids over here, we'll transgender them. And so, I don't know if they know about the politics in Minnesota, right? And so what we did was we wrote a letter to the governors. And so Kim Reynolds in Iowa, Doug Burnham in North Dakota, and Kristi Noem. So we wrote these letters to the governors, and we had them signed by the legislators in Minnesota. Oops, wrong link. So on the original letter, this is the original letter that was sent from Minnesota. And these are all the legislators that signed it. And so this kind of rolls into the Cornerstone Standard, saying, okay, we've reached out to these. Now, what's the next step? The next step is that they would get together and start planning this and having a coalition of other states. Because, it's kind of splitting down party lines. I haven't seen, and anybody correct me, but I have not seen Republicans vote for the transgendering of children or Democrats voting against it. So it's been 100% straight down party lines, and that's what we saw with conversion therapy bans. Although we did see some Republicans come over and support conversion therapy bans, so unfortunately.
So Karen, how can people get involved?
So getting involved is really easy. Right now, you just sign the Cornerstone Standard, the Declaration of Purpose. You read it and
read it. I read it. I read it on Facebook last night. I did a live video. I read the whole thing, and I'm keeping it on my, the little whatever for people to listen to and sign it.
So what we're doing is we're collecting contacts, right? We're building the coalition of citizens, legislators, governors, faith leaders, and community leaders. And so you just fill out who you're signing as, and then you can sign the different documents and then subscribe and then sign it. And upon signing, what you're going to do is you're going to get all the news and commentary that's coming around first the coalition and the status of it. And as we're reaching out to different governors, we'll be posting that, because we have actually reached out to Florida DeSantis as well. Okay. And so as we're able to do that, you'll get the news. And so we got news and commentary, and we're funding additional news stories to be promoted on the website and explaining what's going on. And so, the WPATH files, for example, that's a complete expose that the quote unquote experts on transgender healthcare, it's all scare quotes, that they know that it's harming children. They know that it doesn't work. They know that there's regret, but they're not publishing that data.
Right. Which is what really fascinates me, with Britain going in the absolute other direction with this, because they are listening to the research and the things that are coming out. But for whatever reason, there are states like Minnesota that are just really steamrolling forward, and it's perplexing, because there's just a lot of psychological data coming out about the harm of transgendering children.
Nate, here's the crazy thing about that is the American Psychiatric Association knew in 2014 what's coming out right now from other countries. And they're derelict in duty. I think they're culpable, frankly, because they let this whole transgender thing come when they knew all the science. John Hopkins back in the 70s shut down the transgender stuff because they knew that it wasn't working. They knew in 2014, and I was posting this stuff in 2018, that up to 89% of children, if they are just affirmed in their biological sex, grow out of any gender confusion. That's 89%.
Right. Yeah.
So the stats that are coming around now are just affirming what we've already known, but we haven't been allowed to share because it was homophobic or transphobic,
or hate speech,
right.
or hate speech. We're hateful. We're hateful because we want people to know that children, whatever.
Well, Luca, to finish that thought, we're not hateful. We believe that we have a creator, that we're not just, evolved, and that sex is just a means of carrying on the thing, and where we can be whatever gender we want to be, but that we are fully male and fully female, and that is good. God created us that way for his glory, and that we had purpose in our sex bodies as our gender. Yeah. And what we have here is a different religious viewpoint that's destructive, and the science is coming out showing how it's destructive.
Yeah.
And so, regardless, Nate, I think we've been faithful to the truth the whole time.
We absolutely have.
Yeah.
We've been faithful, and we're going to continue to be faithful, come what may. This seems like a good time to promo our upcoming conference, which will cover these issues. It's called Freedom United. It's 1 week in a day, from today. So May 18th, if you go to our website and go to our events page, so agapefirstministries.org, and if you just go to our events, you'll see it right there, Freedom United. And the event is free, but we would like for you to register. We want to know who's coming, and all of the information in terms of where it is on the website. But it's May 18th. The doors will open at 8:30. Conference starts at 9, and we're going to go till about 4 o'clock. But we want to really encourage people to come to this conference, because one of the most impactful things that you can do as a citizen is be educated on these issues.
Yeah, right.
You need to know what's going on, and that can, affect how you vote and what, things like that. So come and get educated, let your friends know. But it's a very important day in the life of really the state of Minnesota. So please come to Freedom United. You can register today, right after the show. You can go on and register.
Right on.
We also want to let you know about the Twin Cities Prayer Room here at River of Hope Church. We've launched a house of prayer, and that's really who we are as a ministry. It's called Agape First, and we want to first love God. And so, of course, we want to establish a house of prayer. And so we're doing that here at River of Hope in partnership with the church and with other people across the Twin Cities. But we have consistent prayer happening on certain days of the week. So if you go to tcprayerroom.org, you'll see all of the information there about when we'll be praying. And right now we've got some added prayer times, Fridays and Saturdays. So that's exciting.
And we're in such a strategical place for the times, right on the University of Minnesota campus.
We are. We absolutely are. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All the things that are heating up on the campuses against Israel and the ridiculousness of, they're our strongest ally in the Middle East, and they really need our support and our prayers. If you don't realize that, I suggest reading the Bible.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Well, we are praying for Israel. And of course, we did a whole episode a few weeks ago on standing with Israel. And so if you didn't get a chance to see that, go back a few episodes and check that out.
Yeah.
Well, that is our show today. So I want to thank my co-hosts, Darren and Luca Joe. And we'll be back next week. Oh, I should mention, check out our Facebook page, check out our YouTube channel. Agape First Ministries Media is our YouTube channel. And you can also donate to the ministry at agapefirstministries.org. We're US-based missionaries. Everything we do, we have to raise support to do. And so people like you who have a heart to give and the means to do so really do bless us. Luca.
And share it, please. There's parents out there who are just looking for places to help them with their kids and are at a loss and don't know what to do. And you could be the ligament to connect us to them so that they could have some help. So it's not for us, it's for them, it's for the children. So please consider sharing whatever, Agape or our podcast, any or all of the above.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Well, that's our show, guys. Have a great week, and we'll see you back here next week.
See you next week.
I love it.